A Green Beret watched this video game footage and couldn't tell it apart from his actual deployments in Afghanistan. Not for 10 seconds. Not for 30 seconds. He literally said, "This is how I saw most of the war." And he's not talking about Call of Duty. There's a military simulator so realistic that actual special forces operators play it in their downtime. And it's nothing like the shooters you think you know. Every military game you've played has lied to you about what combat actually looks like. Call of Duty, Battlefield, even Squad. They're all designed around constant action because that's what sells. That's what keeps you hitting that play button at 2 a.m. when you've got work in the morning. But there's this one game that does something completely different, something that sounds insane on paper. Most players think realistic means better graphics and accurate gun sounds. Actual veterans, they're playing something where you might stare at a wall for 2 hours and never fire a shot. And they love it. They seek it out. They organize their weekends around it. This completely changes your understanding of what military operations actually involve every time you boot up a mainstream shooter, because you've been conditioned to expect something that has almost nothing to do with reality. ARMA 3 is a military simulation where every single person in a 50-player operation has a specific role. The helicopter pilot is a real person sitting at their house in Wisconsin or wherever. The guy calling airstrikes is a real person who spent 3 weeks learning the actual radio procedures. The fast mover dropping bombs is a real person who studied weapons release parameters. They all coordinate like an actual military unit, following real doctrine, using real communication protocols. Call of Duty is to real combat what Fast and Furious is to actual driving. You watch those movies and you think, yeah, cars are cool, but you don't learn anything about vehicle dynamics or racing lines or brake fade. ARMA 3 is more like a driver's ed course taught by Formula One instructors who keep stopping the class to explain why you died. Every time you complain that a military game is too slow or boring, it's because you've been conditioned to expect Hollywood. The actual mechanics of real operations are 90% planning, movement, and waiting, with 10% of pure chaos that makes all that preparation either worth it or completely pointless, depending on whether someone remembered to bring the bolt cutters. Most players think realism means you're always in a firefight. The reality is that combat is long stretches of nothing, punctuated by moments of absolute terror where everything you planned goes sideways because someone stepped on something they shouldn't have. These operations start with a full military briefing using actual Army procedures, not a quick, "Okay guys, let's rush B in the spawn room." A full briefing that takes 20 minutes before anyone even loads into the mission. They follow the 5-paragraph operations order format that every military officer learns at their basic course. Situation: what's happening in the area, who's there, what they're doing, mission, the specific task, and they say it twice because in real briefings you say it twice so everyone absorbs it and there's no confusion when things go wrong. Execution: how you're actually going to do it, step by step. Service and support, logistics, medical, what happens if someone gets shot, command and signal, who's in charge, how you communicate, what happens if radios go down. You'd think this would be boring as hell in a video game. You paid money to play a game and now someone's giving you a PowerPoint presentation. But when that Green Beret watched this, he pointed out something fascinating. In the mission statement, there are specified tasks, specific things you must do, and implied tasks, things you already know to do from training. Real military units don't read from slides during briefings because everyone already knows the implied tasks. You don't tell a ranger to bring ammunition. That's implied. You don't tell a SEAL to check his oxygen before a dive. That's implied. These ARMA 3 players, they're reading from slides because they're learning actual military procedures in real time. They're civilians or junior enlisted guys who've never been to ranger school or done a deployment, and they're absorbing the same planning process that actual special operations units use. The veteran called out that during his 2007 deployment, they lost a Silver Star recipient named Justin Monchke to a pressure plate IED during exactly this kind of operation. The game simulates why these procedures exist in the first place. Not because they're fun, because without them, people die. The briefing shows the target compound from satellite imagery, shows the approach routes, shows where the helicopters will land, shows contingency plans for if the helicopters get shot down, shows rally points if everything goes completely wrong and you need to escape and evade. This is the stuff that happens before the mission even starts. And in most games, this doesn't exist at all. You just spawn and start shooting. The realism isn't in the graphics, though the graphics are pretty good for a game that came out in 2013. The realism is in the consequences of decisions made 30 minutes before the shooting starts. Watch this insertion. They're flying MH-47 Chinooks into a hot landing zone at night. The pilots are using night vision. The crew chiefs are on the miniguns scanning for threats. The assault team is packed in the back running through their final checks. The veteran watching this immediately called out a problem. They're landing too close to the objective, taking fire during the approach, and one of the co-pilots actually gets shot and falls out of the helicopter during the insertion. That's a real player who just became a casualty before the mission even started. His night is over. He's sitting there watching everyone else play while he bleeds out on the ground, waiting for someone to maybe come back and get him. And then that player probably spent an hour getting ready for this mission, attended the briefing, loaded his gear, flew for 15 minutes to the objective, got shot in the first 30 seconds. Now he's watching. There was this mission where the assault team breached the wrong building because the intelligence was outdated. The satellite photos were from 2 weeks ago, and the target had moved. They spent 40 minutes clearing a compound room by room, found nothing but civilians and some old weapons, and had to extract under fire because the noise attracted every fighter in the area. The player who spent the whole mission providing Overwatch security from a rooftop 3 buildings away never fired a single shot. He told people afterward it was the most realistic military experience he'd had in a game, which sounds crazy until you understand that most military operations are exactly like that. The guy running the M240 machine gun on containment, that's his whole night. Watching a road, scanning for vehicles, calling out anything that moves. In Call of Duty, that's the worst gameplay imaginable. You'd quit and play something else. In ARMA 3, with actual people depending on you to not screw up your one job, the tension is unbearable. You can't check your phone. You can't alt-tab to Discord. Because if a truck comes down that road and you miss it, 20 people are about to have a very bad time, and it's your fault. Picture this. You convince your buddy to try this with you. He's a Battlefield veteran, thinks he knows tactical shooters, has a 2.5K/D ratio he's very proud of. You join a 50-player operation. He gets assigned as a rifleman in second squad. He's pumped. Finally, some real tactical gameplay. You insert via helicopter. His squad gets assigned to northern containment. For 90 minutes, real-world 90 minutes, not game time, he lays prone behind a wall watching a road. Nothing happens. He's bored out of his mind. Starts getting sloppy. Stops watching his sector properly. Starts thinking about what he's going to eat after this. Then a truck full of enemy QRF, quick reaction force, comes screaming down his road. He freezes, doesn't call it out fast enough, doesn't engage. The truck gets past his position and nearly wipes out the assault team during extraction because they weren't expecting contact from that direction. After the mission, his squad leader, a real person, probably some dude in Ohio eating chips, actually counsels him on radio discipline and sector security. Your buddy is genuinely embarrassed. He tells you later that 90 minutes of boredom followed by 30 seconds, where his failure almost killed 20 people, taught him more about military operations than 100 hours of Battlefield. Because Battlefield never taught him that the hard part isn't shooting. The hard part is staying focused when nothing is happening. That's what this game does. It teaches you that combat isn't constant action. Combat is waiting for something to happen while trying not to fall asleep or lose focus, knowing that the moment you do, that's when everything goes wrong. The game simulates the actual friction of military communication, and this is where it gets wild. In real special operations, you're not on one radio channel. You've got your squad channel for talking to your team, your platoon channel for talking to leadership, the air support channel for talking to helicopters and jets, the ISR channel for talking to the surveillance aircraft overhead, the fires channel for talking to artillery or mortars. Watch this player trying to coordinate close air support while his squad is taking fire. He has to switch channels manually, use proper radio procedure, call signs, brevity codes, the whole thing. Confirm the target coordinates, get clearance from leadership, make sure no friendly forces are in the impact area. All while people are shooting at him and his squad is yelling on a different channel that they need help right now. Without understanding this, you think combat chaos is just explosions and bullets flying everywhere. With this knowledge, you realize the chaos is information management under stress. The veteran watching this pointed out that the latency between when the ISR bird sees a threat and when the ground team gets the call can be fatal. The aircraft sees a guy with an RPG on a rooftop. The sensor operator identifies it, calls it to the controller. The controller switches to the ground frequency, calls it to the team leader. The team leader has to process that information and relay it to his guys. That whole process takes maybe 15 to 20 seconds if everyone's good at their job. That guy with the RPG can fire 3 or 4 times in that span. That's exactly what got his buddy killed in 2007. The ISR saw the threat, made the call. The ground team was switching frequencies to coordinate with helicopters. By the time the call came through, the IED was already detonating. No one's fault, just the friction of war. The game doesn't hold your hand with this stuff. You want to call in an airstrike? You better know the 9-line CAS brief format. You better know how to read a grid coordinate. You better know left and right limits, attack heading, egress direction, time on target. Because if you screw it up, that bomb is landing on your own guys and everyone's going to know it was you who called it in wrong. There's a beginner tip buried in this. Start as a rifleman. Learn to follow orders and maintain radio discipline. Just do what you're told and don't talk unless you have something important to say. The advanced optimization? Learn to be a JTAC, Joint Terminal Attack Controller. The guy who calls in air support. Those players are in the highest demand because it requires knowing both ground and air procedures, and most people can't handle the stress of managing multiple radio channels while people are dying. The community running these operations is split between people who think this is the most immersive military experience available and people who think it's too slow, too much waiting, too much procedure. Last month on Reddit, there was this huge debate about whether ARMA 3 is fun or just work, whether it's a game or a second job you're not getting paid for. The mechanics reward teamwork and communication over individual skill. Your K/D ratio means nothing. Your aim means nothing if you're in the wrong position. The best player in the match might be the guy who never fired a shot, but called out enemy movements perfectly all night. Or the helicopter pilot who inserted and extracted everyone without crashing. Or the medic who kept people alive. Or the guy who managed logistics and made sure everyone had ammunition. The veteran communities running these operations, a lot of them are active duty and former special forces using it to stay sharp or decompress. There's this joke in the community, we play ARMA to relax from Call of Duty, which sounds backwards until you realize that Call of Duty is constant stress and stimulation, while ARMA is mostly calm, punctuated by brief moments of intensity. It's closer to how actual deployments feel. Long periods of routine and boredom, then something happens and you're running on adrenaline for 20 minutes, then back to routine. Some units are hardcore milsim, where you have to show up to training twice a week and address people by rank. Some are casual, where you just show up when you want and play. Some focus on modern operations. Some do Vietnam, some do World War II, some do fictional scenarios. The variety is massive, but they all share this focus on procedure and realism over constant action. What's fascinating is watching how different people react to this style of gameplay. Some people try it once and never come back because they're bored out of their minds. Some people try it once and get completely hooked because they finally found a game that respects their intelligence and doesn't treat them like they need constant stimulation. Some people stick with it for years, building friendships with people they've never met in person but have run hundreds of operations with. The game has this open source architecture where the community can build custom missions, custom scenarios, custom everything. That mission the veteran was watching, that was built by players who spent weeks designing the compound, placing the enemies, scripting the helicopter routes, setting up the communications, testing it multiple times to make sure it worked. This means the game that came out in 2013 is constantly evolving. New terrains get added, new equipment gets added, new vehicles, new weapons. The community builds better and better content because they're not waiting for a developer to release DLC. They're making it themselves. There are groups that recreate actual historical battles with accurate terrain and equipment. There are groups that do modern scenarios based on current conflicts. There are groups that do near-future scenarios with experimental technology. The flexibility is insane compared to most games where you're stuck with whatever the developer decided to include. The learning curve is brutal, though. You can't just download this game and jump into a 50-player operation. You'll be completely lost. You need to find a unit, attend their basic training, learn their procedures, learn the controls, learn the equipment, learn the maps. It's a time investment that most people aren't willing to make, which is why the community stays relatively small and dedicated. But once you're over that hump, once you understand how everything works, the depth is incredible. You start understanding why real military units do things certain ways, why they use specific formations, why they communicate in specific formats, why they plan so extensively before doing anything. Because when things go wrong, and they always go wrong, that planning is what keeps everyone alive. The game also simulates all the things that make real operations difficult beyond just the enemy shooting at you. Your radio can get damaged. Your night vision can malfunction. You can run out of ammunition. You can get separated from your unit. The helicopter can crash. The mission can get called off halfway through because of weather or political reasons. There was this operation where the assault team was inside the target building, had the high-value target cornered, and command called an abort because intelligence reported a large enemy force moving toward the area. Everyone had to extract immediately, leaving the target behind. The players were furious. They'd spent 2 hours on this mission and didn't get to complete it. But that's realistic. Real operations get aborted all the time for reasons beyond the ground team's control. Another time the helicopter insertion went perfectly, the assault went perfectly, they got the target, but during extraction one of the helicopters crashed on takeoff. Mechanical failure. Just bad luck. Now half the team is stranded at the objective with a crashed helicopter, the other helicopter doesn't have room for everyone, and enemy reinforcements are coming. They had to set up a defensive perimeter and wait for a QRF to come get them, turning a 30-minute mission into a 2-hour ordeal. These are the kinds of things that never happen in normal games because they're unfun. But they're what make ARMA 3 feel real. The unpredictability. The fact that you can do everything right and still fail because of factors outside your control. That's warfare. That's what veterans recognize when they watch this and say, yeah, that's how it actually is. The game doesn't care about your fun, it cares about simulation. If that's fun for you, great. If it's not, there are 1,000 other games that will give you constant action and dopamine hits. This is for the people who want something different, something that makes them think, something that rewards patience and discipline and teamwork over twitch reflexes and individual skill. The technical side of this is pretty wild too. The game simulates ballistics properly. Bullets drop over distance. Wind affects trajectory. Different ammunition types have different penetration values. You can't just point and click, you need to understand your weapon system and how to use it at different ranges. The medical system in some mods is incredibly detailed. Different wound types require different treatments. You can't just hide behind cover and regenerate health. Someone needs to actually treat you, and if they don't know what they're doing, you're going to die anyway. There are players who specialize as medics and learn the whole system. Tourniquets, bandages, IVS, different medications, triage procedures. The vehicle physics are realistic enough that you can't just floor it across rough terrain. You'll flip the vehicle or damage it. Helicopters are notoriously difficult to fly. There are dedicated flight schools within the community where experienced pilots teach new players how to hover, how to land in confined areas, how to fly in formation, how to do combat insertions. Even something as simple as navigation is complicated. You have a map and a compass, maybe GPS if your unit allows it. You need to actually navigate using terrain features and grid coordinates. You can't just follow a waypoint marker on your HUD, because there isn't one. If you get lost, you're lost until you figure out where you are. This level of simulation means that every role requires actual skill and knowledge. The helicopter pilot isn't just pressing W to go forward. The medic isn't just pressing E to heal. The JTAC isn't just pressing a button to call in an airstrike. Everyone has to learn their job and get good at it, which creates this ecosystem where people genuinely respect each other's skills. The psychological aspect is something that doesn't get talked about enough. When you're sitting in a position for an hour watching nothing happen, your mind starts to wander. You start to lose focus. Then when something does happen, you're not ready. You panic. You make mistakes. This is exactly what happens in real combat situations, and the game accidentally simulates it just by being slow and methodical. There's this phenomenon where new players are super alert for the first 20 minutes. Then they relax, then they get complacent, then they get surprised and killed. Experienced players learn to maintain focus even when nothing is happening. They develop mental techniques to stay alert. They take micro breaks to reset their attention. They communicate with their team to stay engaged. This is the kind of thing you can't really teach in a traditional game, because traditional games never give you the opportunity to get bored. You're always doing something, always moving, always shooting. ARMA 3 forces you to develop the mental discipline that actual soldiers need, just by virtue of being realistic about how much time you spend waiting versus fighting. The stress is different too. In Call of Duty, the stress is constant but shallow. You die, you respawn, whatever. In ARMA 3, the stress is intermittent but deep. You might be calm for an hour, then suddenly you're in a firefight. And if you die, that's it. Mission over for you. You let your team down? That creates a different kind of pressure that feels more meaningful. Players report actually feeling nervous before operations, feeling their heart rate increase during contact, feeling genuine relief when they extract safely. These are emotional responses that most games can't generate because the stakes feel artificial. In ARMA 3, the stakes feel real because of the time investment and the social pressure of not wanting to let down your team. Getting into this isn't as complicated as it sounds, but it does require commitment. You buy ARMA 3 on Steam. It goes on sale regularly for like $10. Don't buy DLC yet. You don't need it. Then you search for ARMA 3 Milsim units and find one that matches your schedule and interest level. Some units operate on US time zones, some on EU, some on Asia Pacific. Some do operations twice a week. Some do them every day. Some are strict about attendance. Some are casual. You need to find one that fits your life, because if you can't show up regularly, you're going to hold back your team. Most units have a recruitment process. You fill out an application, they interview you, they run you through basic training where they teach you their procedures and make sure you're not going to be a problem. This sounds intense, but it's necessary because one person who doesn't know what they're doing can ruin the experience for 50 other people. The basic training usually covers movement formations, radio procedures, weapons handling, medical basics, and whatever other skills the unit considers essential. It might take a few hours spread across a few days. Then you're assigned to a squad and you start running operations. Your first few operations will be overwhelming. You'll get lost. You'll forget radio procedures. You'll probably shoot a teammate by accident. Everyone does this. The key is to learn from it and get better. Ask questions. Watch what experienced players do. Take notes if you need to. If you join a hardcore unit and realize it's too much structure, drop down to a casual unit. If you join a casual unit and want more realism, move up. The community has options for every level of commitment. You just need to find the right fit. The main obstacle people face is the time investment. This isn't a game you can play for 20 minutes between other things. Operations take hours. Training takes hours. Learning the systems takes hours. But if you're willing to make that investment, you get an experience that no other game provides. Once you're in a unit and running operations, you start to see patterns in how real military tactics work. You understand why flanking is effective, why suppressive fire matters, why communication is more important than aim, why planning prevents chaos. These lessons transfer to other games in weird ways. You start playing Battlefield differently. You start coordinating with your squad instead of running off alone. You start thinking about angles and cover and fields of fire. Your K/D might actually go down at first because you're playing more cautiously, but your win rate goes up because you're helping your team more effectively. Some people take it further and use ARMA 3 as a training tool for real-world skills. There are ROTC programs that use it. There are police departments that use it for scenario training. There are private military contractors who use it to maintain skills between contracts. The line between game and training tool gets blurry. The community also produces some of the best military content on YouTube. Full operations recorded from multiple perspectives, edited together with radio chatter and explanations of what's happening. These videos get millions of views from people who don't even play the game, but are fascinated by the realism and coordination. What's interesting is how this affects your perception of military media. You watch a war movie and you start noticing all the things they get wrong, the tactics that don't make sense, the radio procedures that are nonsense, the formations that would get everyone killed. You become that annoying person who points out inaccuracies, but you can't help it because you've learned how it actually works. ARMA 3 simulates real military procedures, not Hollywood action. The realism is in consequences and communication, not just graphics. Veterans actually use this to stay sharp. The boredom is the point. The waiting is the point. The procedure is the point, because that's what real operations are actually like. Next time you're gaming, think about whether you want constant stimulation or whether you want something that teaches you how things actually work. There's room for both. Call of Duty is great for what it is, but it's not realistic and it's not trying to be. ARMA 3 is trying to be realistic, and it succeeds in ways that make it completely different from every other shooter on the market. What's your experience with tactical shooters versus actual simulation? Have you tried anything like this? The comments are probably going to be split between people who think this sounds amazing and people who think this sounds like the worst gaming experience possible. Both reactions are valid. This isn't for everyone, but for the people it's for, nothing else comes close. Thanks for watching. If this changed how you think about military games, that's the goal. Next video breaks down the actual psychological operations tactics that military veterans are using in competitive gaming, and why understanding military deception doctrine makes you a better player in any game. Because if you think realistic military simulation is intense, wait until you see how actual PsyOps training translates to competitive strategy.